A projected $75 million in cap space, but also $75 million in dead money. Paige Dimakos, are we buying, selling, or holding the future of the New York Jets?
I'm holding, and that's being optimistic. The Jets have a lot of work that they need to do this offseason. They made some coaching changes. They pretty much cleared the staff out with the exception of Aaron Glenn. They got some decisions to make on the quarterback position. They've got draft picks. They've got salary cap, but they've also got a lot of dead money. And they're going to have even more dead money if they choose to move on from Justin Fields, which is what I anticipate that they will do. So there's some tough decisions coming up here for the New York Jets. And the reality is, I don't want to be overly negative because I know that's where Jets fans live, right? Jets fans live in pessimism. So I'm here to bring them to a state of neutral, right? Let's give this regime time. Let's try to make some good decisions. You got a lot of draft capital, and let's move past the Aaron Rodgers situation because unfortunately they're still paying. They've still got dead money from the Rodgers situation, and that's just is what it is, right? So they can move the void years out and be able to move forward, but they're going to have to hit on that draft capital, Keith. Otherwise, this is going to be a disaster here pretty soon.
Yep, you're talking about $75 million in cap space. That's offset by $75 million in dead money, right? You're talking about five first round draft picks over the next couple years, right? And then also you're talking about new offensive coordinator and then new defensive coordinator, but that's offset by a head coach that may be on his way out because he's on the hot seat. So this is the epitome of hold, right? Because it seems like they're going to play the 2026 season with trying to figure things out, right? To see if it works or not. And it seems like Aaron Glenn is on a short leash. And I want to take this time to just segue into the coaching changes, right? And I want to ask you, was this situation an upgrade or a downgrade for the New York Jets? And did this signal that everybody in the building needs to be on a hot seat and they may be fired really soon into the 2026 season?
So I think this is where I start off with the optimism for the New York Jets. And that is
Okay.
one, let's start off with the fact that Aaron Glenn, he's a defensive guy. He is going to be calling the plays on the defensive side of the football, which is how it should have been. It's what it should have happened with Robert Saleh. It's what needs to happen with Aaron Glenn. So that component of this is important. The other thing is offensively, they upgraded, in my opinion, over Tanner Eggstead to move to a guy who's proven in Frank Reich, a guy who's got a lot of good contacts. Even just if you look at the staff he's filling out, the names that are a part of his offensive staff, you can see that there's some long-term moves there for the offense. And I think that's the part that I remember when the Jets put this staff together first last year. I was like, I didn't really love the staff last year. And so now I think they've upgraded specifically the play calling duties, moving over to Aaron Glenn offensively. And then defensively, I think we're at a neutral because when you are a defensive coordinator, but you're not calling plays, it's an opportunity for a young guy who's 36 years old to really learn from Aaron Glenn how to operate the whole defense. He's got different experience. He's got passing game coordinator, which means on the offense, he was coaching offense, and then he was the secondaries coach. So I like that he's got different experience that he's coming into the building with. As I said, the reality is Aaron Glenn is going to be calling plays. So to me, he's effectively the defensive coordinator, and you've got a guy on offense who's been a head coach, knows how to do things in the league, and I think is hopefully going to be allotted the time to help Aaron Glenn really right the ship. Now, whether or not Woody Johnson allows them to do that, we know how that goes. That's a totally different story. But I got to be optimistic at this point because hope springs eternal. And that's this time of the year for every NFL fan after the Super Bowl ends.
Yeah, I agree with you on the offensive side of the football. I think it's an upgrade, right? When you go to experienced play caller like Frank Reich, a guy who's been around the NFL for a very long time, it has to be an upgrade. And usually what happens is when head coaches, they get their jobs, right? Aaron Glenn gets his job. You want to take your guys with you, right? You want to give them the opportunity to elevate and move through the hierarchy of rankings. The unfortunate part for Aaron Glenn was that, listen, you were a new head coach yourself, right? And
Yeah.
as far as disasters, last year was a disaster for all disaster for the New York Jets. And I think offensively, they have to figure something out and get going in the right direction because one of the worst offenses we've seen over the last 5, 10 years as far as
Yeah.
pure dysfunction. But the defensive side of the football pays them out because I'm interested to see how this goes. And what I mean is that Aaron Glenn is the experienced play caller, right?
Mhm.
But him going back to calling plays, will it take away from his ability to be the head coach and monitor the in-game situations? And that's something that people were very critical of Aaron Glenn last year, right? And it seems that he him from a head coach, but the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, they were not always on the same page. How many times
Yeah.
last year did we think, man, the Jets might pull this game off, and they found a way to lose it, right? Even Aaron Glenn was dancing on the sideline when they played the Bucks because he thought that they were going to win that football game. That was the one they needed, and they didn't win it. So that's the part that I worry about, is that the detail part, he may get pulled away from that aspect of it. And then lastly, I do want to see how he revamps this defense, because remember,
Mhm.
they made history last year, and history for all the wrong reasons, when they came in and they were the only team to never record an interception
Yeah.
throughout the entire NFL season, which was, I mean, fairly impressive when you say that the NFL has some bad quarterbacks.
That's part of the reason why it can only go up, because it literally can't get any worse. There's no
Mhm.
way you can go to -0 as far as interceptions go, right? You start off at your baseline is the worst defense that we have seen from a turnover perspective in the history of the NFL. So anything, even if you just get one interception, it's an improvement off of what you did last year. But all jokes aside, I think the part that you mentioned I want to discuss is, I think the reason that I have confidence here is in comparison to last year, right? The in-game situation stuff was part of the big problem for Aaron Glenn, which is why I think he decided to go in the direction of an experienced guy like Frank Reich, who, when they're in these in-game situations, especially offensively, you would think it would allow Frank to really run the offense and Aaron to really run the defense. And that's going to allow Aaron to be more in his natural position to be able to call defense, to be able to rely on somebody who's been there and done that. And hopefully, if you guys trust each other, right? That's the big part of this. You're going to have to really trust each other to be able to both have decision making as far as it goes when it's in game situations, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I envision that Aaron Glenn will stay out of the offense and let Frank run the show. The reality is, what is that offense going to be? Who's going to be the quarterback? There's a lot of question marks when we come to this offense as a whole. So defensively, usually when you are a head coach, whatever side of the football is your experience, you better make damn well sure that that part is going well. And last year, they had 0 interceptions. So for Aaron Glenn, this year has to be about his side of the football doing well. Because if not, how can you make an argument to keep him as a head coach?
No, I agree with that. And following up from last year, right? They only played half the season without Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams, right? This year you
Correct.
walk into the entire season without them, and you have to find a way to offset slash supplement the departures of two Pro Bowl caliber football players, right? And one in the trenches, and then one at the cornerback position, which we say is that premium positions on rosters, and you're missing two premium guys. So he has to figure out a way to he's gonna have to call plays, right? Like call his ass off. As far as
Yeah.
calling plays, because there's I would say the cupboard is bare. The cupboard is
Yeah.
bare, and that's what makes me nervous. And just from my time and my experience, right? I think offensive side of the football, you can scheme your way to wins, right? You can have
Yeah.
average players and scheme your way to wins. When it comes to the defensive side of football, usually you have to have dudes, right? When you have high powered offenses, you look and turn around, it's usually Pro Bowl and all pro caliber football players, right? So
Mhm.
that's the part that I think Aaron Glenn is going to have to figure out. Luckily, he has an entire offseason, right? But then that's when you have to also trust the general manager to bring in the right people. And talking about the trust in the general manager, listen, we have a really big decision for the New York Jets to make. Somebody you're familiar with, a former
Yes.
Chicago Bear, and that is Mr. Justin Fields. And I want to ask the question: should the New York Jets and Justin Fields make up or break up?
I think this relationship broke up a long time ago. I don't think there's an opportunity for them to make up, because I think that the moment that Woody Johnson got on camera and talked about his quarterback in the fashion that he did, which is not something we've seen an owner do, especially when you talk about a current player, other than Terry Pagula, who said, "Hold my beer," and then did it 3 months later, right? But
Right.
apparently the AFC East has problems when we talk about ownership and how they talk about their players. But overall, this was a situation that when you heard him discuss Justin Fields, obviously Justin Fields got benched this season. There was a lot of tumultuous just conversation around him throughout the year. And when you look at how the contract breaks down, I envision that he's on every list for a cut candidate pre June 1 or a trade candidate pre June 1. I don't know what his trade value is. That's a tough. You're going to have to get somebody to buy into the quarterback coming out of Pittsburgh and not the quarterback you just watched with the Jets. I think the one thing that does favor them in this situation is we just watched a former quarterback from the Jets win a Super Bowl literally 2 days ago. And that I think favors them in that potentially there's another franchise that goes, hey, maybe it's not about Justin Fields or Sam Darnold or insert or any of those quarterbacks. It's about the Jets not being able to develop quarterbacks or handle good quarterbacks. And they might be willing to trade, I don't know, a 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick. And I think at that point, you've got him on a really friendly quarterback deal. He's getting paid, I think, $20 million this upcoming year. That's 20th of the 32 quarterbacks. So you've got him on a bottom half deal. I could talk myself into the upside. Would I do it personally? No, I would not trade for Justin Fields. But I could see somebody talking themselves into it. And I've seen Pittsburgh Steelers fans already getting excited about the opportunity to bring him back, which Steeler fans just don't know what they want to do with the quarterbacks. Like they have no idea.
I didn't see that, but that is insane.
I know.
Because Steelers fans are the same exact people that didn't want Justin Fields. It's crazy how I guess time, time changes.
Fans
Time
just don't know
heals.
what they want, Keith.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the moral of the story is fans don't really ever really know what they want, and they're always a fan of the backup quarterback and the quarterback that they don't currently have on their roster. That's
Yep.
like the number one thing every fan is in love with. But are you in agreement with me, or do you want Justin Fields to stay?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak from Justin Fields' perspective, and I'm breaking up with the New York Jets. I'm up
Yeah,
out of there as fast as possible, right? You have to understand toxic traits, right? And you've had two quarterbacks, Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. Both were drafted to the New York Jets. Both played really bad with the New York Jets. Both left the New York Jets and went on to be Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks, right? So that lets me know that this situation, the New York Jets, is toxic as hell, and I'm getting the hell up out of there. If I'm Justin Fields, I'm looking at what the setup is, right? And we just discussed it with the head coaching situation. We know what that sign is, right? Whenever a head coach has to get rid of an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and pretty much the entire building outside of him, that means that the head coach is on a hot seat, right? And that
mhm,
means that walking into the 2026 season, Aaron Glenn probably has to go 3-1, maybe 2-2 at the worst, right? Over the first 4 games of the season. And we're still talking about the New York Jets. So that probably won't happen. So that means you're going to be going through a head coaching change and more tumultuous, dysfunctional stuff throughout the 2026 season. And for Justin Fields, he's at the breaking point, which was very similar to Sam Darnold, right? At that point in his career where if he doesn't go somewhere where he can be groomed properly and put in a really good spot as a quarterback, his career is really close to being done, right? Because now you're
yeah,
talking about the Chicago Bears, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Jets, right? And very similar to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had the New York Jets, he had the Panthers, he had the 49ers, he had the Vikings, right? And that's
yeah.
when he turned things around. So this is his 14. So if I'm Justin Fields, I'm not even so much worried about if the New York Jets pitched me on, hey man, we want you to be our guy again. I don't know if I want to be your guy, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the thing. And I'm trying to maybe go somewhere like a Minnesota, right? Where I can be behind JJ McCarthy and be with a play caller that I trust in Kevin O'Connell. And then potentially if JJ doesn't play well, I can step in and throw the football to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and play in that offense.
So, how do you handle that though? Because obviously he's under contract. So, this is going to be a decision that the Jets are going to have to make for him, right?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I think they are going to exercise whatever they want. I think they are going to try to trade him. I don't know that that's going to be I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. It's very hard to muster up trade value. It's a similar conversation, the one we're having even with Kyler Murray. When you've got a guy that you benched and the whole NFL knows that you benched them, it's very hard to then turn around and go, hey, I got a really good asset that I want to sell. Well, if it's such a great asset, then why did you bench the player? Right?
Mhm.
It's a tough thing to then turn around messaging and narrative wise to flip around. So if you're let's take it back to the Jets perspective, I agree with you. If I'm Justin Fields, if I'm any quarterback, I don't want to play for the New York Jets. Okay. Let's just start there. I'm pretty sure Dante Moore went back to college to avoid having to play for the New York Jets, right? For the University of Oregon. So I think the reality is while yes, I understand the Justin side, how about the is it are they capable to get this relationship back in a positive way because they got a new offensive coordinator? Like, do you think that that factors into this at all?
No, I would say this. It's a talking point, right? It's a leverage
Yeah.
piece. It's a convincing point, right? If you go back to recruiting, it's a reason why you can bring the guy in the building and sit him down, and you have Frank Wright walk him through all of the different things that he's done with past quarterbacks and has success, right? That's the Jets perspective. If I switch to the Justin Fields perspective, I say it sounds good, but it would have sounded better last year, right?
Mhm.
This year, I mean, it's too much, in my opinion, it's too much writing on the wall. And this thing has shifted so far left the other way that I think if Justin Fields doesn't get like, you're better off if you're Justin Fields by not playing this year, right? And I'm
Yeah.
talking about, I know you were going to, I feel like you were going to go in the direction of contract, right? Contract
Yeah.
dispute, right? And they have you technically under contract. And if they decide not to trade you, then what do you do if you're Justin Fields? I sit down because at this point in his career, he's better off sitting on the bench than putting out more bad film with another dysfunctional
Yeah.
franchise. And I'm not telling you don't compete. What I'm telling you is protect yourself. The Jets didn't want you to be successful, right? Like
Yeah.
the owner, and you always talk about Woody Johnson, he knows this is dysfunctional, right? Like he
Yeah,
made
for
the
sure.
call to fire the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and he probably plans on firing Aaron Glenn at some point,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I'm not
100%.
playing into that hands, and I have to protect myself if I'm Justin Fields.
I agree with you. I just think it's a tough position for Justin because he really has very little leverage, right? And it's if he was coming off of a year where he hadn't been benched or he had played even just decent ball, I think
Mhm.
there's an opportunity for this. It's just going to be fascinating because part of me goes, yes, I heard what Woody Johnson said and I wasn't surprised because that's who Woody Johnson is. The flip side of that is Aaron Glenn, if you remember coming in to him taking this head coaching job, he was spoke so highly of Justin Fields and really went out of his way to be like, this is the guy that I want because my
Mhm.
time in the NFC North, watching him as the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator, I saw what he could do. So it's very interesting because we know what the head coach's intentions were. The owner is just going to say what the owner is going to say because at the end of the day, that's who they are, and that's Woody Johnson. He's just going to pop off whenever he damn well pleases because nobody can stop him, right? There's no checks and balances for owners in any sport because nobody can stop them. The PR guy, the media team, they all try, and when they get in front of a camera, it usually goes left. And we've seen that more now over this past year than we have in recent times. But I think this conversation with Justin is going to be so interesting because he's 27 years old for context. So Sam Darnold's 28. So you see okay, he's 1 year behind, but now what is that opportunity that you could see him flip the script, right? Is there an opportunity or is this over? I still believe that Justin Fields can be a good football player in this league, and it's because I have yet to see any organization actually try to build their offense in a way that makes sense for the skill set that is Justin Fields. And I understand people like Bears fans want to make fun of it, whatever. But Justin Fields was successful in college at the highest level against some of the best talent. Some of the best film we ever watched was Justin Fields going 1v1 with Trevor Lawrence when they played each other in a big game, right? And just him toughing it out and making it through that. And he went throw for throw with him. So I believe that Justin Fields has the confidence in himself. He stayed very grounded throughout this entire process, similar to how Sam Darnold talks. He just seems to be very even keeled. So I hope he gets an opportunity because I hope the Jets just cut him. That way, he has the opportunity to go pick whichever franchise he wants to go play for. And he plays on a veteran minimum deal and has the opportunity to revitalize his career in the same way that Sam Darnold did. Because if the Jets keep him and force him to play, I think it's going to be all bad for both sides.
Yeah, nah, that's what I think too, and I agree with you. I think that there's still something to unfold with Justin Fields, right? And in the right situation, I would buy a lot of stock in him developing the right way. I'm just out on this situation, and I hope that he is, for the sake of his career,
100%.
out on the New York Jets, because this is the part that we haven't gotten into, which we'll discuss on our draft episode, right? Of fix the franchise with the New York Jets is if the Jets draft a quarterback at 2, the other part that you don't want to be in is the veteran that starts the season, and then the rest of the fans are cheering for the rookie to get in and play, right? Like that's the other part you
Yeah,
don't
the
want to put
Russell
your
Wilson of this year, right?
yeah.
In New York. Same
Yep.
situation.
Yep. 100%. But let's do this, Paige Dimakos, because not only do they have to figure out the quarterback position, right? They have to figure out the running back position. And I'm talking about Brees Hall. Brees Hall contract is up. They can franchise tag him, which it will be $14.5 million. Should the New York Jets franchise tag Brees Hall?
No, I don't think that they should. And it's because that would make him a top 5 paid running back in the NFL. And I think they can use a unrestricted franchise tag. There's a couple different tags that they can place on him, right? The franchise tag, the unrestricted franchise tag, the team tag. So they have some flexibility to move things around. If they franchise tag him, he automatically is going to get paid that $14.5 million projected salary. If he goes and tests the market, what the market says his value is about $10.5 million, right? So if you do the difference, if he's worth $10.5 million, if that's what they're projecting, does it make sense to franchise tag him and pay him $4 million more? And that's, to me, I'm not doing that because Brees Hall is not a top 5 running back in the NFL. I feel confident that he's a good player. I would look at keeping him and giving him a deal that makes him in that 10.5 range. But when you're talking about this Jets team, that's a whole nother player that you need on your roster. $4
Mhm.
million. And this team can't afford, because of the dead cap that they have with Aaron Rodgers, because of the potential dead cap that they have with Justin Fields. If they cut him, it's $23 million of more dead money. If they do that, they are behind the 8 ball. They need to be very, very strategic with their money. And $4 million may sound like, well, it's just four. No, that's a couple veterans playing on vet minimums. That's two players that come in, or one decent player coming in on a 1-year deal. So I think that's where, if I'm the Jets, I'm hiring the best capologist that exists to make sure that we are absolutely exercising every little detail, because we can't afford to do it any other way. You got too much dead money, and I know what they're going to do. They're going to end up cutting Justin Fields, and then it's going to be $90 million of dead money. That's a lot of dead money against your cap. So I would be very strategic and smart here, even though I'd like to keep Brees Hall. And I think you can just keep him on a deal where he's paid about $10 to $11 million.
Yeah, I'm gonna even go lower than that, just because I'm thinking of some light comparisons, right? As far as running backs, and Brees Hall this past year had his first 1,000 yard season, right? And I think the year
Yep.
before he floated somewhere between 800 and 900 yards, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about, as you said, right, a top running back production in the entire NFL. I don't even know if I'll put Brees Hall in a tier 2, maybe potentially tier 3. So I'm looking
Yeah.
at the Chuba Hubbards, the Tony Pollards of the NFL, right? And those guys' contracts, they float somewhere around $7.5 to $8.5 million, right? And I think if you're a running back, you take that, because wouldn't you rather a 3-year, $8 million contract versus, the one franchise tag, and they may be up after that, right? And so I just think that fits. And even if I only have $75 million in cap space, am I trying to spend $10 million on Brees Hall, right? Like, that's what you
Yeah.
have to ask yourself, right? Like, almost what, maybe 15% of your available cap space you spent on Brees Hall. So I don't know about even going into the double digits, but I would definitely want to bring him back if he comes in at that 7.5 to 8 mark.
I have a question for you. So I know that this running back class coming out of the draft is not like last year's, where last year there was a ton of running back depth. I don't
Mhm.
think there's the same coming out of this class. So if you had the option, if you had to pay $14 million, right? Let's say they franchise tag Brees Hall, or draft a running back. Which situation are you running with? Would you rather pay him the 14, or would you rather try and take your chances and go draft a young guy, maybe even with an early pick, since you do have extra draft capital this year?
Right. So at this point in with Brees Hall, right, and if I'm the general manager, I'm looking at data points, right, and I have the data points of Brees Hall has played in the NFL for 3-4 years, and over those 3-4 years, he has not shown me that he's a All Pro level, a Pro Bowl caliber, even a really good starter, right? He's shown me to be an average starting running back. And so therefore, the $14 million, I'm walking away from that, right? I wouldn't even use the franchise tag on him, and I would be willing to walk away from him. And I know this is not a deep running back class at all, but there are some backs that you can find that I think can give you similar production. If you're talking about over a 17 game season, being able to scratch the surface of 1,000 yards, right? And I'm gonna use your Chicago Bears, for example, with Kyle Monangai, right? If Kyle Monangai was a full-time starter all 17 games, I feel really comfortable in the fact that he can scratch the surface of 1,100, 1,200 yards
Yeah.
rushing, And is a Kyle Manung guy better than a Brees Hall? I would go yes. I would go yes with that answer. So I'm having confidence in the fact that I can find a replacement. And I'm all about paying running backs and for running backs. But in this current situation, this is more about talent. This isn't because he's a running back. This is about the talent that I feel that he is at the running back position.
And that's not even discussing a major injury, right? He also had a major
Yeah, yeah,
injury throughout in
torn.
his
Yep,
career, torn
early
ACL.
on.
So you're also factoring that in at a position where we know the NFL is very there's a lot, it's scarce, the amount of running backs that get paid at a high level because of the position, the hits that they take, and it's very rare to see a guy get paid at a high level, especially a guy like Brees who's had a major injury and has yet to really shine in this offense. So I don't envision, listen, again, this is a show where we're telling you what we would do. Jets fans, don't get used to doing the smart thing. Get used to your team franchise tagging him and not doing the smart thing because that's what's most likely to happen, unfortunately, for you guys.
Franchise tag him and then pay him $20 million, right?
Yeah, give
Something
him
like that.
20 million because but salary cap doesn't matter. Oh yeah, I forgot. We got 90 million in dead cap. Good work there, Jets.
All right, let's do this, Paige Dimakos. Let's play a little stay or go, right? And for
Yep.
those who are new to this segment, stay or go is we're going to go through the top free agents that each NFL team has entering the offseason. And we're going to say, hey, should they stay or should they go from the New York Jets perspective, front office, general manager perspective? Let's get rock and rolling. We have a couple guys here that we're going to go through. Let's start with Elijah Vera Tucker, interior offensive lineman. Should he stay or should he go?
So obviously he didn't play any snaps for the Jets this past year, but I think this is just from the position, right? I would try and keep him and have him as a part of what you're doing moving forward, just from a talent perspective, and just I think what you're going to have to pay him. It's projected to be a more friendly deal coming off the injury, so I would keep Elijah Vera Tucker. I think there's gonna when we get through this list, there's a lot of go goes, so I'm gonna give at least a few stays, and I'm staying with Elijah Vera Tucker.
Okay. So this one, I started to lean on the side of you, right? I started to
Yep.
say, you know what, stay with him. He's a good football player when he's out there.
Yep.
Don't hear any noise about him, right? He's position versatile as far as can play guard, can play some tackle, former first round pick. But the more I looked into his injury history.
It's pretty
This
bad.
now makes the third year that he's had a season-ending injury, right? And this is the old boring cliche, right? Best ability is availability, right?
Yep.
And it's very hard to pencil in your starting five when of the 5 years that you've had an offensive lineman there, he's been injured, right? So now you
Yeah.
almost need, you need 6, 7 offensive linemen because your backup is going to start. So I let him walk, and it might be a situation that you need a change of scenery, right? But then
Mhm.
also you can, if you talk about drafting towards a scheme, towards a good scheme, I think you can find a young, healthy interior offensive lineman to kind of plug and play in that position. And I'll also say this, that he's anchored by the two first rounders that the New York Jets have spent first round capital on, talking about Omar Mimbo on the right line and then Olu Fashanu. And then also they drafted Joe Tipman a couple years ago. So
Yeah.
I move on, and it's one of those where you don't want to, because Elijah Vera Tucker has been good for the Jets culture. He hasn't been a negative asset to him, but the injuries I think are mounting. And when you have season-ending injuries, they
Yeah.
kind of, it's a domino effect, right? To where it affects one part of the body, then other part of the body goes, then other part of the body goes. So
So I have a question for you. Do you think if you can have him as a guy who, instead of being expected to be a starter, is more of a guy that you can work in and make sure you have, because obviously we know it's very rare to have five offensive linemen start the year and end the year. It's almost impossible. I think there were two NFL teams that had guys that started the whole year. So if you could pay him at a level at which he was more of a guy that gets rotated in, or actually a backup, that would you look at that just because of the talent of who he is when he is there? Because
mhm.
I think that's the part that's tough, is if you can get him on a real discounted deal, knowing, okay, we have this guy who can rotate in, who we know has high ceiling, but his floor is not really anything other than his injury problems.
Yeah, so you said something interesting, and it ties back into this, right? You talked about the leverage and negotiation due to the injuries, right? Like allowing that to
Correct.
play into your leverage, right? Being able to negotiate against that. That might be the only caveat that I would have, right? And then also, and we'll, like I said, we'll do the draft episode, but them knowing that they have 2 first round picks this year, right? So could it be a conversation where you sign Elijah back? And I think I looked at the research. The top interior offensive linemen, right? Guards and centers, they make somewhere around 30 million dollars a year, right? And so let's bring that down to the middle of the pack, right? Average somewhere around 15 to 20. If you can get them in there, maybe at that 13, 14, $15 million mark, then I would be willing to maybe do a 2, 3 year deal and then draft a young guy. The conversation becomes, I wonder where Elijah Vera Tucker is at this
Yeah,
point
for
in his
sure.
career, right? Like, is he like relegated to saying, I believe in people that believe I'm gonna get injured, right? Or does he want to go somewhere else? So I think that becomes a difficult part.
100%. If I could get a 2 year, $24 million deal done, I think that's where I would look at like, okay, you give him a 2 year deal, so he gets, and you give him guaranteed $20 million, right? I think you give the player the opportunity to say yes because you front load the guaranteed money for him, especially with the injury history. He's probably not going to get anybody else to bite on that. And if you can do that, I think you give yourself the flexibility to be like, hey, if he plays at a high level, you got a great contract, right? And then if he plays his ass off, he then goes and gets another big boy contract after that. Because I think no matter what, based off the injuries, he's going to have to play on somewhat of a prove it deal is what's going to have to happen no matter where he is. And that's just because of the injury history. Nobody's going to give him a long-term big deal because they can't count on him. And so this is his opportunity to say, hey, maybe I do need to change the scenery, right? That might be what happens. Or he may stay with the Jets if he feels they're being loyal to him, whether or not they actually are, right? It's more often than not, they're just doing a smart business decision, but we'll call it loyal for football people.
All right, let's go from offensive lineman to the pass catchers. Right, wide receiver John Mechie. Should the New York Jets keep him or should he go?
I'm keeping him. I think the Jets need as much offensive firepower as they can get, and I think there's some upside here with John Mechie alongside Garrett Wilson. You've got some pieces that you're going to have to work around, and not everything can be done through the draft, right? And they may want to think about, as we had discussions at the Senior Bowl, about how they utilize their draft capital to potentially move up. They may try and tempt the Raiders. I don't think that the Raiders are going to say no. As far as I don't think there's enough draft capital to get them to move off of Mendoza, but you never know. I think there's plenty of time for this to get very interesting with how they utilize their draft capital. So if I was the Jets, I would keep John Mechie because I think you need some weapons offensively to build around. And if you are going to look at bringing a quarterback in, you cannot bring a quarterback into an empty cupboard. And that's what you're going to be looking at if you keep moving on from players who have talent. And I think the contract will be right and the players right from a talent and from a football character standpoint. You got to start building around the right type of players, and I think he's the right type of player.
Yeah, let's pick up right there. The right type of football player, right? This is a young man, entered the NFL. I think it was second round pick, right? But there's conversation of him being a first round pick, right? Obviously, had injuries early on, even, was diagnosed with cancer, right? Early on in his NFL career. So had to battle back, right? And then obviously in that process, the Houston Texans, they decided to continue to draft wide receivers, right? And there's a reason why they have one of the best wide receiver cores, and Mechie just didn't fit in
Yeah,
at that point, right? And they traded for John Mechie. I think there's still a lot there to unlock, right? You're talking about a young, explosive wide receiver, start stop ability, all of those different things. And you hit on it that whoever the quarterback may be, you need weapons, right? They also traded for AD Mitchell last offseason. So you have the young core of Garrett Wilson, AD Mitchell, and John Mechie. I like that moving forward for a
me
young
too.
quarterback, giving him receiving options. So yeah, I definitely think you pay John Mechie. Obviously, his production doesn't match him getting paid anywhere near the top of the market, right?
No,
Not even the middle of the market. He's probably going to be towards the bottom of the market overall when talking about wide receivers. But you need high character guys, and you need guys that want opportunities. And I have to believe that John Mechie is a player that wants an opportunity, just with how the
100%.
Houston Texans played out with their wide receiver room quickly becoming so congested with the players that they drafted.
And they need, like you said, we need high football character guys, and it is very rare that an organization, especially an organization like the Jets, has an opportunity to get a player at a low dollar amount that has way more upside to play his way into being a top tier guy. And that's why I
Mhm.
think this is a very smart strategic decision, because when you're cap strapped, when you've got a lot of dead money, these are the types of decisions that are very important for your franchise, because John Mechie can be a very good football player for your team, and you are going to be getting a discount based off of the talent level. And that's very rare. So I think this is a very easy decision. Like I said, Jets fans, don't call us angry when they don't inevitably do the smart things that we're telling you to do, but this is what we would do if we were running the Jets.
Yep, yep. All right, let's end this off with this: the quarterback, right? And not Justin Fields. We're talking about backup quarterback. He's a fan favorite, right?
Yes.
Tyrod Taylor. Should he stay or should he go?
I think if you're moving off of Justin Fields, you got to keep Tyrod Taylor. And
Mhm.
you said backup quarterback, but really, he was kind of the starter this year, right? I mean, he was
Yeah,
made him. He was. Here's the thing: it feels weird calling him the starter, because the Jets really didn't ever commit one way or the other until very late on in the season, when Woody Johnson basically said all those awful things about Justin Fields. So I think Tyrod Taylor has been a guy that's proven he can be a bridge guy for you. And that's how I would utilize this situation, because this draft class, Fernando Mendoza goes one. I don't want to hear the New York Jets are taking a quarterback, because it's a massive reach if they decide to go with a quarterback early on in the first round. That cannot happen. So you got to have a guy that you can count on to be a bridge guy, to either get you to next year, where you're going to go get a guy because you've got a lot of draft capital. Maybe you use some of that to go into next year to really make sure you get your guy. Or you draft a guy later on in this draft class, and you let them sit, you give them time to develop, because I know, Jets, that's what you don't like doing. You love reaching on a quarterback. That's what you do best. You love going, I saw Zach Wilson throwing shorts in October, and we're going to draft him number 2 overall. Please don't do that. Please stop doing the same thing that you do every single time and expecting a different result. Sign Tyrod Taylor, keep him there, let him be the guy that gets you through this period of time, because Tyrod's proven that he's a good enough backup quarterback to get you to that midway way 8-9 games. You're not going to go win a Super Bowl with Tyrod, but he can help you compete. And you need to do that to let another guy develop behind him, give you the flexibility to draft another guy next year, or go find your guy with a trade or some other situation throughout this offseason. Because it's just the Justin Fields situation is not going to come back. It's already dead and gone. They're broken up and stay broken up. There's no coming back from that. And I think Tyrod Taylor's got to be the bridge guy here for the New York Jets.
yeah. Tyrod is probably one of the most talented quote unquote backup quarterbacks,
Yeah,
right?
for
And when I
sure.
look at it year over year, if you're talking about 32 NFL quarterbacks, I would probably consistently put him within the 32, meaning that
Yep.
some teams have quarterbacks that are worse than Tyrod Taylor. At the end of the day, just with his skill set. But I say the same thing. Listen, New York Jets, you're moving on from honestly, whether you're moving on from Justin Fields or not, whether you're drafting a quarterback
Yeah.
at 2 or not, keep Tyrod Taylor. This
Agreed.
guy has been a consummate pro. He's a guy that doesn't bring a lot of disruption. He doesn't ask for a lot of attention, right? He puts his head down and grind. He understands what it means to be a backup, but he also understands what it means to be a starter and seems like a team first player. So you can't lose, I'm sorry, with these type of backups as your backup quarterback, because they play the exact role that you want to be played. And yes, the upside is potentially some type of consistency, right? Because there were
Yeah.
moments last year where the New York Jets looked better with Tyrod Taylor at the
Yeah.
quarterback position. And just because he's been in so many situations, and I could say this, that when we talk about skill set wise, how highly I think of Tyrod Taylor, I think in the terms of the NFL and embracing dual threat quarterbacks, he was probably only 3 to 5 years off of being a
Hmm.
guy that people
Hmm.
really would have sought after as far as him being a dual threat quarterback. He would just, unfortunately, he was 3 to 5 years out of that window before the NFL actually embraced athletic running quarterbacks.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Tyrod Taylor or Jacoby Brissett?
Oh, I'm gonna go Tyrod. I'm gonna go Tyrod because of
Hmm.
the legs. I thought you were gonna ask me Tyrod Taylor or Jackson Dart at this point.
No.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go there, and guess
Oh
what? I'm
boy.
asking my own question, Tyrod Taylor. Um,
You heard it
so
first. Jets fans, you can take that to the bank, baby. You take that to the bank. Tell all those Giants fans we are out on Jackson Dart until we see some real football being played.
till we see you sling the rock. Well, yeah, so listen, that wraps up this episode of Draft Club where we are fixing New York Jets, taking care of the offseason, free agency for them. Make sure to tune back in when we take care of draft season. Yes, the NFL draft for them, because we want the Jets to be good, right? We're tired of the Jets being miserable. Listen, that's Paige Dimakos. I'm Keith Sanchez. This is Draft Club, players only.